Hi there, welcome back to the channel, my little corner of YouTube where I get to share crochet patterns with you through tutorials. For this tutorial, I'll be making this easy lace top. Now, it's worked in panels, a front panel, back panel, and the sleeve panels, and there's a little bit of shaping for the neckline. For the materials, you will need yarn. I'm using 100% cotton in a 4-ply weight. You'll need a 3mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors, a yarn or wool needle, measuring tape, and stitch markers. So let's get on with the tutorial. For the first round, we'll be working a foundation double crochet. Now we'll be working this foundation double crochet for our back panel, for our front panel, and for the sleeves. Let's begin with the back panel. Form a slip knot. Now to work that foundation double crochet, chain 2. That's 1 and 2. Into the first chain, so it's the chain that's away from the hook, yarn over. Insert the hook into that first chain, pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and go through only 1 loop on the hook. Now, you formed a little chain, and this chain will be the start of our next stitch. Then it's yarn over and go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and go through 2 loops on the hook, and we formed our first double crochet. Moving on to the next stitch, yarn over, insert your hook into that chain that we had formed earlier on, going into both loops from that chain, pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and go through only 1 loop on the hook. Now we formed a chain, and that will be the start of our next stitch. I always place my fingers on that chain to guide me along so that I always know my next stitch begins right there. Then it's yarn over and go through 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, and we formed our second double crochet. Then it's yarn over, insert your hook into that chain, going through both loops from that chain, pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and go through 1 loop on the hook, forming the next chain for the start of our stitch. Then it's yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, and we formed our third double crochet. Here are the shoulder to shoulder measurements for the different sizes. Use the measurement for the size that you are working on. You may pause the video to jot down the measurement. Continue on to work a length for your foundation round as I have done here. Now at this point you can measure this length of your foundation round, and it must measure your shoulder to shoulder measurement for the size you are making plus 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters. Do not stretch on the foundation round when measuring. Now I've worked it to 19 inches, and that's because the shoulder to shoulder measurement for a size medium is 16 inches. So it's 16 inches plus 3 inches gives me 19 inches. Now, once you have your measurement, you'll go ahead and count the number of stitches. You want your stitch count to be in multiples of 6 plus 1. I've worked my foundation round to 79 stitches. So 78 is in a multiple of 6, and then it's the plus 1. Increase on your stitches to adjust the stitch count. Now that our stitch count is right, we can go ahead and work the next round. Continuing on, it's chain 2. Chain 2 counts as our first stitch, in this case a double crochet. Then you'll skip 2 2 stitches, and into the next stitch work 2 double crochets. To work a double crochet, it's yarn over, insert your hook into that stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. So we've worked 1 double crochet, and here's the next one. Then it's a chain 2, 1, 2, and into that same stitch work 2 more double crochets. 1 and 2. So here we have 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. Then it's skip 2, into the next stitch work 1 double crochet. So our stitch pattern is skip 2 stitches, into the next stitch work 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, all into that 1 stitch. Then it's skip 2 and a double crochet into the next stitch. So you'll continue on with the stitch pattern to the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of round 2. So right at the end, I skipped 2 stitches and worked a double crochet into the last stitch. Round 3, chain 2 and turn. Now we're working our stitch pattern into those little spaces, those chain 2 spaces that you see here. So into that space, you'll work 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. Then we'll work our next double crochet into the double crochet from the round before. So that's the stitch pattern for round 3. Into those chain 2 spaces, we'll work 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, all into that 1 space. And into our double crochet, the single double crochet from the round before, we'll work 1 double crochet. Continue with the stitch pattern to the end of the round. I've continued on with my back panel, and all I did was repeat round 3 until I have the length that I'm looking for. Now this length is from the shoulder going down to the waist or the upper hip. That's up to you entirely. Work as many rounds as need be to get to your required length. Now once you have the required length, there's just 1 more round to work to shape the back shoulders. Continuing on from where we had stopped on the back panel, chain 2 and turn. We're working shoulder 1 for the back panel. Now we'll be working our stitch pattern into 4 of those chain 2 spaces. It's the same stitch pattern as from round 3, where it's 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets into all chain 2 spaces, and then 1 double crochet into that single double crochet from the round before. So you can work it into as many or as less chain 2 spaces as you'd like to. It all depends on how close you'd like the neckline to be around the neck. So if you want the neckline to sit further away from the neck, you'll work it into 3 chain 2 spaces and so on. I chose to work it into 4 chain 2 spaces. So here I am right at the end. I've worked it into those 4 chain 2 spaces, and I ended with a double crochet into the double crochet from the round before. and that's my back shoulder 1. Now we will work the same pattern as we have done on the side for our next shoulder. So at this point you can fasten off and cut off the excess yarn. We will now work shoulder 2. Attach yarn to, if you count from the opposite side, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those chain 2 spaces and into the double crochet right next to it, as I have done here. Bring in your yarn to attach it at that point. Then it's chain 2. Chain 2 counts as our first double crochet. Again, we're working 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets into all chain 2 spaces, and we're working 1 double crochet into that single double crochet from the round before. Continue on to complete shoulder 2. I've continued on. I'll work my last double crochet into the second chain from chain 2. Then it's fasten off and cut off the excess yarn. Now here we have our shoulders on either side and we have our neckline in the center. That completes the back panel. We can set it aside and we'll work on the front panel. Now I've already continued on with my front panel and it was just the same as I had worked the back panel. So for my foundation round, I worked the same number of stitches that I worked for my back panel. I then repeated rounds 2 and round 3, and I continued with round 3 until my front panel was 4 rounds shorter than that of the back panel. We will now work the shoulders on the front panel. So for shoulder 1, we're continuing on from where we had stopped, and I had worked into 4 of those chain 2 spaces. So again, for the front shoulder, I'll work the pattern into 4 of those chain 2 spaces, and I'll work 5 rounds in total, unlike the back shoulder where I had only worked 1 round. So again, we're just repeating round 3, and this time it's for 5 more rounds. And that's to bring it to the same length as that of the back panel. I've continued on with the front panel. Here I've worked shoulder 1 and shoulder 2. So I've worked 5 rounds for both these shoulders in total, and all I did was repeat the stitch pattern from round 3 for both shoulder 1 and shoulder 2 on the front panel. At this point, the width of the shoulder is the same as the width of the shoulder on my back panel. So as you see here, because I worked it into 4 of those chain 2 spaces on either of my panels. And that's important that the width of the shoulders are the same, because you'll need to stitch them together. Also, having worked those 5 rounds for my front shoulders, that brought the length of my front panel to be the same as that of my back panel. When I fastened off on my front panel, I left behind a longer length on the tail ends, and that's to help with the seaming of the shoulders. Now you can bring your front shoulder and your back shoulder together, and we'll seam them together to join. Here I have my shoulders seamed. Here are the armhole depth measurements for the different sizes. Use the measurement for the size that you are working on. Remember that you're looking for twice the armhole depth measurement. So you will need to take this measurement and multiply it by 2. We can now move on to the sleeves, and for this pattern it's exactly the same as it was for the back panel, only the foundation round is a lot shorter. Now I've already worked 2 of these panels and I have them ready. To work the sleeve panel, you will begin with your foundation round, and your foundation round must measure twice the armhole depth for the size that you are working. The armhole depth for a size medium is 7.5 inches, so my foundation round measured 15 inches. That's twice the armhole depth for a size medium. Now once I've got the length of my foundation round, I counted the number of stitches and adjusted to a multiple of 6 plus 1. I worked 61 stitches in total. I then worked round 2 and repeated round 3 to get the length of sleeve that I'm looking for. I went for a shorter length. Now this is just to my elbows. So before fastening off on the sleeve, you'll see that it's got a jagged edge at the top, and I'd like to straighten up on that edge because I plan on joining it to the panels, the front and back panel. And if you look there, it's a straight edge. So when you join the two, it would look rather odd. So I do want to go ahead and straighten up on my sleeve. Continuing from the last round on the sleeve, chain 2, and then you'll chain a further 1. Now this counts as a single crochet and chain 2, and then you'll turn into that chain 2 space from the round before, single crochet. So to single crochet, insert your hook into that space, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through 2 loops on the hook. Then it's chain 2, 1, 2 into the double crochet from the round before, single crochet, chain 2 into that chain 2 space, single crochet, chain 2 into the double crochet from the round before, single crochet. So you'll continue on with the stitch pattern to the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of the round and I've straightened up on that edge. So right at the end, into the second chain from chain 2 from the previous round, single crochet. You can then fasten off and cut off the excess yarn. Do the same for the other sleeve. My sleeve is complete. I'd now like to find the center of that sleeve. So to do so, I'll fold it in half and I'll place a stitch marker along that folded edge. So that marks off the center of my sleeve. Now doing this helps to align the sleeve to our shoulder on the front and back panel. So where we've seamed along the shoulder, we'll bring in our sleeve and align it with the stitch marker. Now that the sleeve is aligned, you can seam the sleeve to the front and back body panels. I've seamed along both the sleeves to join them to my panels. Now to join along the sides. So you'll fold your one panel on top of the other as I am doing here. To seam along the sides of our panel, once we've got them all aligned, attach your hook to that bottom edge of our top as I am doing here. Bring in your yarn and attach. Chain 2. Now we will be attaching this chain 2 on the other side, and to do that we will single crochet into the bottom of the other side. Then it's chain 2, 1, 2, and go back to our far side. We'll be working our stitches into the little gaps along the sides of our top. So into that gap, single crochet. Now this is on the opposite side, single crochet. Then it's chain 2, 1, 2, and going back to the other side, the little gap on the other side, single crochet into that gap. Then it's chain 2, 1, 2, back to the opposite side, in that little gap, single crochet, chain 2, going back to the opposite side, into that gap, single crochet. So you'll continue this way all along the sides to the end of the sleeve. I have continued joining the two sides of my top, and this is what it looks like. So I've worked my way all the way to the sleeve. Here I am at the end of the sleeve, and I've worked chain 2 as you see here. So I'll join to the opposite side by slip stitching. Fasten off, cut off the excess yarn, and do the same for the other side. Now that we've joined along the sides, we can go ahead and work a round of double crochets along the neckline. Attach yarn to the center back along the neckline, as I have done here, and then you'll attach your yarn at that point. And then it's a chain 2. Now chain 2 counts as our first stitch. So here we're working double crochets into all double crochets from the round before, and we'll work 1 double crochet into every chain 2 space. So here's a double crochet into that double crochet from the round before. And then you'll see as I get to that chain 2 space, I'll work 1 double crochet into that space. So you'll continue working double crochets all around the neckline. I've continued on. I've worked double crochets all around the neckline. So to end the round, into the second chain from chain 2, slip stitch to join. Fasten off and cut off the excess yarn. Now you will see as you're working around the neckline that there are certain places along the neckline where you are unable to work double crochets. There are no stitches at that point, like along these sides of the neckline. So I just went ahead and worked those double crochets into the little gaps that I found along the way. And I did the same on both sides. Now there's just one more thing to do before this project is complete, and that's to weave in all these ends. So the thing is, when weaving in your ends, you need to go back and forth into the stitches to lose those ends. You can, once you're satisfied with weaving them in, you can cut off the excess. Now you weave in all the ends to complete your project. And that does it for this tutorial. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.